Have you ever heard of a mermaid queen who gave up her throne just to live a life of poverty on land? A tale never written in history books, but one whispered by the waves to those who dare to listen. Deep beneath the endless ocean lies a magnificent kingdom untouched by human hands. A realm built of glittering coral and shining pearls where thousands of sea creatures bow before one ruler, the Mermaid Queen. She was known as the most beautiful, the most powerful, and the most beloved. With a single command, her armies would rise. With a single smile, her kingdom would rejoice. To everyone, she seemed to have it all. But behind the brilliance of her throne and the endless cheers of her people, she hid a secret. Every night, when her palace was silent, the queen would swim alone to the highest cliff. Gazing toward the dark surface above where stars shimmered on the waves. Her heart trembled each time she saw the moonlight dancing on the ocean. Something up there was calling to her, something her wealth and power could never give. She often wondered, why do those who live on land, frail and poor, seem to carry a deeper joy? Why do their smiles feel warmer, more genuine than the applause of her court? That night, the waves crashed louder than ever, as if urging her closer. She looked up, toward the world she had never dared to touch, and whispered softly so only the sea could hear. Does true happiness exist up there? A single tear slipped from her eye, dissolving into the tide. She did not know that this question would change her destiny forever. For the very first time in her life, the Mermaid Queen began to long for something no crown, no kingdom, and no treasure could ever buy. And that night, without realizing it, a choice had already begun to root in her heart. A choice that would shake the foundations of the underwater realm and turn her into a legend never to be forgotten. Are you sure you want to know what happened after the queen looked toward the surface? The answer came slowly, not from the stars above, but from the silence within her heart. She realized that longing could no longer be ignored. Every wave that touched her skin whispered the same truth. She did not belong entirely to the throne anymore. Days passed, but the feeling only grew stronger. In the grand halls of her palace, surrounded by walls made of luminous coral and guarded by loyal soldiers, the queen began to feel trapped. Every smile she gave to her subjects felt heavier. Every word of praise felt emptier. Her advisors, unaware of the turmoil in her heart, continued to speak of alliances, wealth, and power. They urged her to marry a noble prince of the seas to strengthen the kingdom's rule. But all she could think of was the laughter of humans she had once glimpsed on the shoreline, their joy so real, even in hunger. At night, her dreams became vivid. She saw children running barefoot on sandy shores, families sharing meals of simple bread and fish, lovers holding hands beneath the stars. None of them wore crowns, yet their happiness shone brighter than any jewel in her treasury. She would awaken breathless, with the echo of their laughter haunting her. Her closest maid once found her sitting by the window of her chamber, gazing upward. "Your Majesty, why do you look so far away?" the maid asked. The queen answered with a faint smile. "Because perhaps my heart is already there." But the ocean does not easily let go of its queen. Rumors began to stir within the palace walls. The advisors whispered among themselves. Why had the queen been disappearing so often? Why did she return with eyes that glimmered, not with pride, but with longing? Some began to suspect betrayal, while others feared she might abandon the throne. The queen knew the whispers would only grow louder, and soon her freedom to even dream might be taken away. Yet her heart had already chosen its path, though her lips had not spoken it. One night, she rose from her throne after yet another council meeting filled with arguments over power and treaties. She walked to the edge of the palace balcony where the vast ocean stretched endlessly. If only they knew that a crown is far heavier than poverty. And as the moonlight bathed her face, a decision burned brighter in her chest. Soon, she would no longer only look to the surface, she would reach for it. But she did not yet realize that every choice comes with a price, and the ocean was already preparing to test her resolve. The very next morning, the queen awoke to the sounds of hurried whispers in the palace halls. Her advisors had gathered, their faces grim, their voices sharp. They spoke of unrest in the farthest reaches of the kingdom, of subjects questioning her absences, of nobles murmuring that their queen's heart was no longer fully with them. She entered the council chamber with regal grace, but her eyes betrayed her thoughts. The discussion quickly turned toward her future, and once again the pressure mounted. Marriage to a powerful sea prince. They promised her a stronger kingdom, unshakable authority, and eternal loyalty from the people. Yet with every word they spoke, the crown on her head seemed heavier, as though it was made of stone. Her silence unsettled them. One advisor leaned closer and asked, "Your Majesty, do you not hear the duty that calls you?" The queen looked at him, her voice calm yet distant. "I hear something else calling me, something far beyond these walls." That night, the whispers grew louder. Some advisors feared she was bewitched. Others accused her of disloyalty to the throne. Shadows of betrayal began to creep into the palace, waiting for the right moment to strike. The queen, unaware of the depth of their suspicions, swam once again to the surface. There, she found herself hiding behind rocks near the shoreline, watching a fisherman and his family. Their clothes were tattered, their meal was small, yet their laughter echoed louder than any song sung in her palace. A little girl placed a piece of bread into her father's hand, smiling as if it were a feast. The sight struck the queen deeper than any crown jewel ever had. Her heart raced. For the first time, she dared to imagine herself not as a ruler of the seas, but as a simple woman who could share in that kind of warmth. She touched the water's surface gently, her reflection shimmering between her true form and the life she yearned for. But deep beneath her, the kingdom churned with unrest. The ocean currents carried whispers of her absence to every corner of her realm. And while the queen dreamed of another world, forces in her palace began to plot. For when a queen's heart drifts away from her throne, there are always those eager to claim it for themselves. In the darkened chambers of the palace, the advisors who once bowed in loyalty now gathered in secret. Their voices were sharp as blades, laced with ambition. "If the queen cannot remain faithful to her crown," one hissed, "then perhaps the crown must find another head." Plots began to take shape. Some spoke of replacing her with a puppet ruler, others of forcing her into a marriage she could not refuse. And while they argued, a colder thought settled among them, that perhaps their queen's disappearance was not a mystery of longing, but an act of betrayal against the sea itself. Meanwhile, far from these conspiracies, the queen lingered near the shoreline once more. She had grown bolder, swimming closer to the fisherman's village. That night, hidden in the waves, she listened to a family singing as they mended their nets by the fire. Their voices were imperfect, sometimes breaking into laughter, but to her, it was the most beautiful music she had ever heard. She closed her eyes, imagining herself among them, not as a ruler, not as a queen, but as a soul who belonged. Her heart ached, yet it also awakened. The decision that had only burned quietly inside her now threatened to consume her entirely. She knew she could no longer balance both worlds, the shimmering palace of duty and the simple joy she saw on land. But even as she dreamed, the ocean stirred with warnings. A sudden current brushed past her, colder than usual, almost like a hand tugging her back into the depths. And from within those depths, an ancient voice echoed, as though the sea itself had awakened. "My queen," the voice rumbled, deep and sorrowful. "To step beyond the water is to forsake the kingdom that breathes because of you. Choose carefully, for the sea does not forgive." She froze, her heart racing. Was it a warning from the gods of the ocean, or the beginning of a curse that would follow her forever? The queen's hands trembled as she pressed them against her chest, trying to steady her breath. The waves, once gentle companions, now felt like chains pulling her downward, reminding her that every heartbeat she spent dreaming of the land was a betrayal to the sea. But desire is stronger than fear, and so she swam back to her palace with the ancient warning still echoing in her mind. The moment she entered, she felt the change in the air. The once warm greetings of her court had turned into stiff nods and hushed murmurs. Eyes followed her every step, suspicious and untrusting. Her throne still stood tall, adorned with coral and pearls, but as she sat upon it, she realized it no longer felt like hers. That night, she could not sleep. The sea god's voice haunted her, yet so did the image of the fisherman's family. Finally, as dawn approached, she rose from her bed and swam into the deepest cavern of the ocean, a place forbidden to most, the shrine of the Old One, an ancient sea spirit said to hold the power to change destinies. The shrine glowed with eerie light, the walls carved with runes that pulsed like living veins. As she approached, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, neither fully fish nor fully human, but something far older. Its eyes, deep and endless, fixed upon her. "You come with a restless heart," the Old One whispered, its voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I know what you seek. You wish to shed your crown, your throne, even your form, to walk among mortals." The queen's lips parted, but no words came. The spirit leaned closer, its presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. "Do you understand the cost, child of the waves? To walk on land is to bleed with every step. To love as humans love is to suffer as humans suffer. And once the choice is made, you will never again be the sea's daughter." Her heart pounded in her chest. For a moment, doubt clawed at her. Was she truly ready to pay such a price? Yet in her silence, the answer already lived within her. The Old One raised a hand, summoning a swirling orb of light between its palms. "If you truly desire it, come at the next moonrise. Drink from the tide of change. But beware, Queen of the Sea. Once your tears touch the sand, you will never return." And with those words, the cavern fell into silence, leaving the queen alone with the weight of a choice that could shatter two worlds. She lingered in the darkness, her reflection faintly visible in the glowing waters of the shrine. For the first time, she saw herself not as a ruler adorned with jewels, but as a woman standing at the edge of her own destiny. When she returned to the palace, the corridors felt colder than ever. The advisors greeted her with forced smiles, but she could sense their suspicion gnawing through every gesture. Whispers clung to the walls. The queen is changing. The queen hides secrets. The queen's heart is no longer ours. At the council, pressure returned like a tightening net. They insisted once more that she bind herself to the sea prince, sealing her loyalty to the kingdom. But their words blurred in her ears. All she could hear was the voice of the old one echoing within her. Once your tears touch the sand, you will never return. Her silence during the meeting was mistaken for defiance. One of the bolder advisors dared to speak what others only whispered. Perhaps our queen has forgotten where her duty lies. Gasps rippled through the chamber, but she did not respond. She only rose from her throne, her flowing hair drifting in the water like shadows, and left without a word. That night, she swam to the surface again, her eyes fixed on the moon. There, on the shore, she saw the fisherman's family asleep by their fire, huddled together beneath a worn blanket. The sight of them, content in their simplicity, struck her harder than any command of duty ever could. She touched her lips and whispered, "If this is weakness, then let me be weak." The tide swirled around her, pulling and pushing, as if the sea itself struggled to keep her close. But the decision within her grew sharper. The next moonrise was approaching, and with it, the moment she would either seal her fate or surrender it forever. Unbeknownst to her, however, shadows were already moving within the palace walls. The advisors, convinced that their queen was slipping beyond their grasp, began to set their final plan into motion. For while the queen dreamed of freedom, the throne she wished to abandon was already being prepared for another. In secret, the advisors gathered in the grand hall, their eyes gleaming with ambition. They spoke of a cousin of royal blood, an ambitious duke of the deep, who could be crowned in her place. "The people will not resist," one of them said coldly. "They crave stability, not a queen whose heart drifts toward the surface." Unaware of their schemes, the queen spent her nights torn between fear and hope. She remembered the old one's warning, but the vision of the fisherman's family lingered in her mind like a beacon. She longed to feel the warmth of fire, the softness of earth beneath her feet, the laughter of a home unbound by duty. Each thought pulled her further from the sea, further from the throne she had once carried with pride. The day before the moonrise, she was summoned to the temple of her ancestors. There, the high priest confronted her with eyes sharp as coral blades. "My queen," he said, "the ocean whispers of your absence. The sea stirs with unease. If your loyalty falters, the very tide will rise against you." Her heart wavered, but she held her gaze steady. "I have given my life to the sea. Yet what is loyalty if it costs me my soul?" The priest recoiled at her words as though struck. "Beware," he warned, "for such thoughts invite ruin." That night, she swam once more to the hidden cavern of the old one. The water shimmered as if awaiting her arrival, the tide of change glowing faintly in the dark. She hovered before it, her heart pounding, every part of her trembling with the knowledge that one sip would end her reign forever. And yet, as her fingers brushed the glowing water, she felt a sudden tremor in the sea. The currents twisted violently, and in that chaos, she heard voices carried from the depths, the cries of her people. Something was happening in a kingdom, something terrible. The queen turned back, her decision suspended in the balance. The moonrise was coming. The chance to change her fate was near. But so too was the storm rising in her own palace. The queen left the cavern in haste, her heart divided, her body torn between the pull of destiny and the cries of duty. As she swam back through the dark waters, the ocean itself seemed restless. Shadows moved like specters along the palace walls, and the once harmonious kingdom now thrummed with discord. When she entered the throne room, she found it filled with advisors and nobles gathered in a circle around the ambitious duke. He stood tall in armor of obsidian shells, his smile sharp and dangerous. At his side, banners of rebellion rippled through the current. "Your Majesty," one advisor sneered, his voice dripping with false respect, "your people grow tired of your silence and your vanishing acts. The kingdom needs a ruler who is loyal to the sea, not one who gazes longingly at the surface." The queen's gaze hardened, but she said nothing. Her silence only emboldened them. The duke stepped forward, his tone commanding. "If you cannot serve the ocean, then step aside. The sea has no place for a queen whose heart belongs elsewhere." Her pulse thundered in her ears. For a moment, she considered fighting, summoning the vast power that still surged through her veins. Yet as her eyes scanned the chamber, she saw not loyalty, but doubt. The people who once adored her now looked away, uncertain, afraid, ready to follow another. She rose from her throne with regal grace, her voice calm but resolute. "You think a crown defines me. You think these walls hold my worth. But a crown is only as strong as the heart that wears it." The duke smirked. "Then your heart has already abandoned you." Her chest tightened, for in those words lay the truth she could no longer deny. The throne was lost to her, the kingdom already slipping through her fingers. And so without another word, she turned from them all and swam toward the open sea, leaving behind the throne that once defined her life. Yet as she ascended toward the moonlit surface, a single thought burned within her. The final choice was still before her. Would she drink from the tide of change, or let the storm of betrayal drag her back into the depths forever? The question echoed louder than the roar of the waves as she broke through the water's surface, gasping beneath the silver light of the moon. The glow of the tide still lingered in her memory, its promise of freedom burning in her heart. She swam toward the hidden cavern once more, her body trembling, her spirit caught between terror and longing. Every stroke brought her closer to the destiny she had sought for so long, and yet the whispers of her people, the kingdom she was leaving behind, pressed against her chest like anchors. At last, she reached the shrine. The Old One awaited her, its shadow towering, its eyes glimmering with timeless patience. The glowing water shimmered like liquid starlight, rippling in rhythm with her racing heart. "You return," the Old One murmured, its voice deep as the ocean trenches. "The storm has begun. The throne no longer holds you. Now the choice must be made." The queen hovered above the tide, her reflection fractured by the glow. She saw two versions of herself staring back, one with the crown of pearls, forever bound to the ocean, the other, bareheaded, fragile, but free beneath the stars. With a trembling hand, she cupped the glowing water. Its warmth stung like fire, as though the sea itself resisted her decision. For a long moment, she hesitated. The cries of her people echoed faintly in her mind. But then came another sound, stronger, clearer. The laughter of the fisherman's family, the memory of a life unshackled by duty. Her lips touched the tide. The liquid seared her tongue, burning down her throat until every nerve screamed. She cried out, her voice echoing through the cavern, her body convulsing as her tail split apart, transforming into fragile, trembling legs. The pain was unbearable, yet it was also liberation. She collapsed onto the cavern floor, gasping, her new form shaking beneath the moonlight streaming in from above. She was no longer the sea's daughter, no longer its queen. And as her tears fell onto the stone, mingling with the glowing water, the sea roared with fury. The old one's voice thundered one final warning. Remember, child, you have chosen poverty over a kingdom. Do not forget the price you must pay. Those words thundered in her mind as she dragged herself from the cavern, her legs trembling beneath her, unsteady like a newborn fawn. Each step was agony, every movement a reminder that she had severed herself from the sea forever. The moon guided her path as she staggered onto the shore, collapsing onto the cold sand. The tide lapped at her feet as though begging her to return, but she knew it would never welcome her again. She was no longer its queen, no longer even its daughter. She was human now, fragile, powerless, and utterly alone. For hours she lay there, until dawn broke and the world of men stirred awake. It was then that the fisherman found her. His weathered face creased with surprise as he knelt beside her. "By the gods," he whispered, "a lost soul from the sea." Without hesitation, he carried her to his small hut by the cliffs. The hut was nothing like her palace of coral and pearls. Its roof was patched with straw, its walls rough and uneven. Yet inside, warmth radiated from the hearth where his wife tended the fire. Their children stared wide-eyed at the strange woman with hair like flowing water and eyes too bright for any commoner. They gave her food, just bread and fish, the simplest of meals. She ate slowly, each bite filling her with a strange sense of peace she had never known even at her grandest feasts. That night, she lay upon a straw mat, listening to the sound of the family's laughter as they shared stories before sleep. Tears pricked her eyes. This was the life she had chosen. But outside, the sea raged with storms fiercer than ever before. The kingdom beneath the waves had erupted into chaos. With the queen gone, the ambitious duke pressed his claim to the throne. Advisors turned into traitors, soldiers into rebels, and the once united ocean was now a battlefield of ambition and fear. And though the queen no longer lived beneath the waves, she could feel the sea's anger in her bones, as if it still pulsed within her veins. The price of her choice had only just begun.